My name is Mark Davis, 47 years old. I live in a small town in Missouri, where highways are like the lifelines that keep the whole community running. I'm a long-haul truck driver, the kind of job people often attach all sorts of labels to: boring, exhausting, dangerous, and maybe even a little lonely. You know, most folks think being a truck driver is just sitting behind the wheel for hundreds, even thousands of miles, running the same roads over and over, with nothing but fatigue and stress to show for it. And yes, it's tiring, stressful, and sometimes dangerous, but what they don't see are the other sides of it. There are moments of unexpected beauty on the road, sunrises on endless highways, strange little stories you hear at roadside diners, or that odd sense of freedom when you're crossing half the country on your own. This job isn't for everyone, but it's my life. Today I have a load going from Kansas City to Denver, Colorado. A little over 600 miles, and I'll be on the road for 2 days, with one overnight stop at a Wyoming rest area before delivering the freight the next morning. In a month, I usually take about 8 to 10 trips like this, depending on the workload. Each trip pays me around $1,800 to $2,000, and after subtracting food and little extra costs, I still bring home a decent amount. It won't make me a millionaire, but it's enough to take care of my family and to know I'm doing something meaningful. These loads keep supermarkets stocked, keep factories running, keep cities from coming to a halt. Sometimes, I think of myself as just a tiny gear in a massive machine, quiet, but necessary. I woke up at 4:30 a.m., after a long sleep but still with a heavy head. Next to me was Sarah, my wife, the woman who's been by my side for over 20 years. She was still asleep, her hair spilling across the pillow, the soft glow of the night lamp on her peaceful face. I carefully sat up, making sure not to wake her. Down in the kitchen, I found that she had already prepared breakfast and a carefully packed sandwich box, along with a little note that read, "Drive safe, honey. The kids and I will be waiting for you." I smiled. It's the little things like this that give you enough strength to step into another long journey. I ate a quick breakfast: fried eggs, a few slices of bacon, and a strong cup of black coffee. Breakfast for drivers isn't fancy, it just needs to fuel you up. When Sarah came downstairs, we shared a short hug. I kissed her forehead before stepping out the door, her quiet gaze following me. She's long since gotten used to these early morning goodbyes. I stopped by the local supermarket to grab a few essentials for the trip: bottled water, some fruit, a couple of protein bars, and of course, a pack of energy drinks. I know they're not healthy, just sugar and caffeine, but when you're driving hundreds of miles straight, they're almost unavoidable. You know, people always say, don't drink soda, avoid caffeine, live healthy. And I agree. But if all you ever ate was boiled vegetables, drank plain water, and never enjoyed a drink or two, life would be so dull. Live longer or live more interestingly, which one is better? I don't have the answer. I just know I choose what keeps me awake and alert so I can come home safely to my wife and kids. Leaving the supermarket, I walked over to the parking lot where my Freightliner Cascadia was waiting. A blue long-haul truck weighing nearly 40,000 pounds, it's practically my second home. I did a quick check on the tires, oil levels, and paperwork before climbing into the cab. There's something like a ritual about shutting the heavy door, sitting behind that giant wheel, and breathing in the mix of leather and diesel. It's the moment that tells me the journey is about to begin. When the engine roared to life, I always felt a little rush of anticipation. Not fear, but the awareness that from this moment, I'm leaving everything familiar behind. I'll cross endless highways, sudden rainstorms, lonely nights with only the radio for company. But at the same time, I'll see sunsets no one else gets to see, I'll hear strange stories at roadside diners, I'll live days that belong to no one else but me. Before leaving, I pulled out my phone and made a quick video call to Sarah and the kids. They were at the breakfast table, laughing noisily. My youngest son said, "Dad, don't forget to bring me something." My teenage daughter reminded me to drive slowly and not stay up too late. I nodded, smiling, and ended the call. In that moment, I realized. Long-haul trucking isn't just a job, it's a life woven between days away and the moments you come home, where you learn to treasure every single breakfast with your family, every hurried hug at the door. I started the truck. The massive wheels rolled onto the asphalt, taking me away from the small familiar town. Ahead was 600 miles of road, 2 days of driving, and one cold Wyoming rest stop waiting for me. But right now, all I saw was the long road ahead, the pale autumn sky, and the familiar hum of the engine like a second heartbeat. And I knew, every trip carries a story. Today, I'm going to share it with you. I left the town while the sky was still dim. The yellow glow of the streetlights stretched over the damp pavement, and the little shops along the road were still shuttered tight. The Freightliner's cab trembled slightly as I shifted gears, letting the 18-wheeler ease into motion for real. The first miles of any trip always give me a strange feeling. It's like stepping out of one world and into another, a place where it's just you, the road, and the machine. I glanced at the rearview mirror and watched my small town slowly fade away, then disappear completely as I merged onto Interstate 70. Before truly picking up speed, I went through the usual routine, checked the gauges, engine temperature, fuel levels, and just listened to the hum of the truck to make sure everything was running right. You can't head out for hundreds of miles without knowing your rig is solid. A tiny issue can turn into a big problem in the middle of nowhere. About half an hour later, once the truck settled into its rhythm, I pulled up the GPS to confirm my route. Roughly 600 miles, about 10 hours of driving, split into 2 days as required by FMCSA regulations. Out here in the US, you can't drive more than 11 hours in a day, and you've got to rest at least 10 hours before you can start again. It's designed to keep drivers from burning out, but honestly, sometimes it still feels like it's not enough. Your body doesn't always sync with a schedule. I set the cruise control at 65 miles an hour, a safe and fuel-efficient speed. The cab grew quiet, the steady rumble of the engine became like a second heartbeat. This is when your mind drifts. You start thinking about everything: work, your family back home, or who you might run into at the next truck stop. On the road, you see all kinds of drivers. Some are incredibly polite. They keep their distance, they signal properly, they understand that steering a 40,000-pound rig isn't the same as driving a little sedan. They give you room, and you nod in thanks even though they can't see it. But then, there are the reckless ones, the small cars that dart in front of you, cutting you off just to save a few seconds. They don't realize that to stop a truck this size, I need at least the length of a football field to come to a halt. I've seen accidents caused by one careless move like that. And trust me, those images stay with you. There was one time, years ago, I was coming down a mountain pass when a car suddenly swerved in front of me and braked hard. My only instinct was to steer into the emergency lane. I can still remember the tires screeching, the truck shuddering, my heart pounding like it wanted to burst. By pure luck, no one was in the lane next to me. When I finally stopped, my hands were trembling. And the car? It sped off like nothing happened. From that day on, I always reminded myself, the road teaches you 2 things: patience, and the fact that not everyone thinks like you do. I kept driving as the sky began to shift into soft shades of morning pink. An SUV pulled up alongside me. Inside was a familiar dad at the wheel, a mom in the passenger seat, 2 kids glued to their tablets in the back. The father glanced at me, gave a small nod, like a silent hello, then their car slowly passed ahead. Little moments like that, they warm you in a way. They remind you you're not completely invisible out here. Another time, a group of Harley riders thundered past me, their exhaust echoing through the highway. They waved as they went by, and I blinked my high beams in return. It's an unspoken culture on the road, a quiet way of saying, we're all travelers out here. Being a trucker isn't just driving. It's managing an entire trip. You've got to plan your fuel stops where it's cheaper, where it's safer. You've got to know where to park overnight, how to stay on schedule but still get enough rest. Every little decision on the road affects the whole journey. Sometimes I turn on the CB radio, the trucker's lifeline. You'll hear anything from accident warnings up ahead, to someone sharing that their kid just graduated. Strangers' voices, yet familiar because they're living the same kind of life you are. After about 3 hours behind the wheel, I pulled into a rest area. I grabbed a strong cup of coffee and a donut-quick fuel to keep going. Inside the diner, there were a few other drivers. We didn't say much. Just a nod of acknowledgement. Sometimes one might start small talk. Where you headed? Denver. You? Salt Lake. Then silence again. Like we all understand each of us has our own road, our own deadlines. You know, there's something strange about long-haul trucking. You learn to appreciate silence. In regular life, silence can feel awkward. But on the road, it feels like peace. I got back in the truck and started up again. Ahead was a stretch of open highway, familiar road signs, and rolling hills fading in the distance. I didn't know exactly what the day would bring: traffic jams, sudden storms, or maybe just an uneventful drive. But one thing I did know. Every road has a story. And it's these stories, collected mile after mile, that make up the life of a truck driver. I had been driving for almost 4 hours. The highway began to widen, low rolling hills appeared faintly in the distance, and the sky cleared as the sun climbed higher. On stretches like this, you feel like you're drifting through a giant postcard: blue skies, endless roads, no one else around. I was thinking about stopping at a rest area about 50 miles ahead when I noticed something up ahead. A silver sedan sat on the shoulder, hood popped open. Next to it was a woman, small-framed, waving frantically for help. I slowed down, not slamming the brakes, just easing off the gas to take a better look. And then the very realistic thought came. Maybe it's real. Or maybe it's a setup. You see, there are plenty of stories out here about scams, roadside traps. On trucker forums, there are endless warnings: a stranded woman waving for help is just bait, and when you stop, someone else jumps out from the bushes. News outlets have covered drivers getting robbed or worse just because they stopped out of kindness. I gripped the wheel tighter, eyeing her through the windshield. She didn't look like a scammer. Her face showed genuine panic, her eyes darting nervously, and there was no one else around. I sighed and told myself, if it's a trap, at least I have the CB radio to call for help, but if I keep driving, I might be leaving someone truly in trouble. So I eased the truck down, clicked on the hazard lights, and steered the 18-wheeler onto the emergency lane. I stepped down from the cab. The woman came toward me, her voice shaky. Thank God you stopped. I'm on my way to Wichita to see my mother. My car just died out of nowhere. I called roadside assistance, but they said it'll take at least 2 hours to get here. She introduced herself as Linda, driving up from Oklahoma. Her old Toyota sedan had simply shut off. I leaned over and looked under the hood. It only took a minute to see the problem: just a loose battery terminal. Something that for a trucker like me was nothing, but for someone who didn't know cars? It might as well have been rocket science. No big deal, I said. Just a loose connection. I can tighten it up for you. She looked at me like I'd just saved her life. I grabbed a wrench from my toolkit, tightened the bolt, checked the cables, and told her to try starting the car. It fired up immediately. Linda let out a breath of pure relief. Oh my God, thank you. I didn't know what I was going to do if you hadn't stopped. She dug into her purse, pulled out some cash, and held it out to me. Please, let me pay you. Or at least give me your number. I want to send you something to thank you later. I shook my head with a small smile. No need. It was nothing. Just call for help next time and don't stand so close to the road. It's dangerous out here. Linda lowered her eyes slightly, then looked back up with a soft, "Thank you," one more time. I climbed back into my truck, and as I pulled away, I saw her still standing there, waving. Back on the road, I let out a long breath. Part of me felt lighter for helping someone. Another part of me was still a bit tense. You never really know what's coming on the highway. But that's also the thing about this job. You meet people for just a fleeting moment, help them, and then move on. Little sparks of connection in an otherwise solitary journey. The road ahead opened into the vast plains of Kansas. I rolled the window down a bit, letting the wind rush in. The smell of dry grass, earth, and a hint of diesel mixed together. Strangely enough, it was comforting. Sometimes, long-haul trucking feels a little like traveling. You get to see America's nature unfold, endless golden fields, hazy green hills far in the distance, tiny wooden towns tucked along the highway. And when the sun climbs higher and the light hits the asphalt just right, it almost feels like freedom itself. People think trucking is all monotony and fatigue. But the truth is, every day, every run is different. You pass through places most folks only see on a map. You watch the weather shift in ways no one sitting in an office ever notices. 1 hour it's bright sunshine, the next you're driving through snow. You learn to rely on yourself. Something breaks? You fix it. You're tired? You find a place to rest. You're lonely? You tune into the CB and hear voices of other drivers living the same life. And every once in a while, a kind stranger's wave, or a nod from another trucker, or a smile from a family passing by. It's enough to remind you that even on the longest road, you're not completely alone. The truck kept rolling, tires humming against the blacktop. I knew there were still many hours left in this day, but somehow, that little roadside story had made this trip feel a bit more meaningful. You see, long-haul driving isn't just hauling freight from point A to point B. It's about the human moments along the way. It's about choosing to help, even when it might be risky. It's about the landscapes you'd never see if you just stayed in one place. And so, I kept going. I've been driving long haul for 14 years now. Long enough to know this job isn't just about sitting behind the wheel and pressing the gas. It's a whole way of life filled with habits, little tricks, and even quiet fears that only people in this line of work truly understand. If you ask me, what do you eat on the road, the honest answer isn't very healthy. Most of us survive on fast food, sandwiches, snacks, strong coffee, and of course, energy drinks. Some drivers are disciplined, they pack meals from home. But when you're on a tight schedule, you don't always have time to hunt for healthy food. You eat what's quick and available at the next truck stop. Here's a trick a lot of drivers use: sunflower seeds or chewing gum. Sounds silly, right? But when you're driving all night, keeping your mouth busy helps you stay awake. It's also something to do when there's no one to talk to. And about staying alert, it's not just caffeine. You learn to rotate between music, podcasts, or chatting on the CB radio with other drivers. But the biggest rule? Know when to stop. There's an unspoken rule out here: if your eyelids start to feel heavy, don't fight it, find a spot and pull over. Most accidents happen because someone tried to push through just a few more miles. When I was new to this job, I once slept in a freezing cold cab on a Wyoming winter night, shivering under a thin blanket. Now I've learned to be prepared: thick blankets, a small portable heater, even a little electric stove. A long-haul truck cab becomes like a tiny moving apartment. You learn to make it your temporary home. Then there are things only truckers really get. The anxiety of weigh stations. Even when you know you're underweight, your heart races as you roll onto the scale because one small mistake could cost you a heavy fine. The nightmare of finding parking at night. Get to a rest stop too late, and every spot is taken. You're forced to park somewhere sketchy, and you pray it's safe. The long lonely nights. You listen to the radio, watching city lights flicker in the distance, knowing your family is sitting down for dinner while you're eating instant noodles in your cab. I flipped on the CB radio, channel 19, the lifeline for truckers. A rough but cheerful voice came through. "Yo, anybody on I-70 headed toward Denver? Heads up, there's a minor accident ahead, traffic's a bit slow." Another voice replied. "Yeah, I just passed it. A pickup slid out, but it's not too bad. Watch around mile marker 142. Then someone else chimed in with a laugh. "Don't worry, cops are already there. Hey, anyone wanna hear something good? My wife just sent me a picture me boy finally learned to ride a bike. Huh, being a dad from the road is weird, man." I smiled to myself. This is how we connect out here. Voices without faces, but they're colleagues living the same road life as you. The sky began to turn darker. Heavy clouds rolled in, like someone had dimmed the lights on the whole world. The wind picked up, rocking the trailer slightly. I heard a warning come over the radio. "Attention, severe storm with high winds reported between mile 180 and 220. Drivers are advised to seek shelter." I frowned. I still had about 100 miles to go before the planned stop. And the load was on a tight deadline. I told myself, it's probably just some rain. I'll slow down and keep going. But I was wrong. The storm hit faster than expected. The wind howled like it was trying to rip the truck apart. Sheets of rain slammed against the windshield, visibility dropped to just a few yards. The rig shook violently from side to side. I gripped the wheel tight, holding the lane with every ounce of focus I had. Ahead of me, I caught a glimpse of an SUV just before it veered hard into the next lane, almost swiping the front of my truck. I slammed the brakes. The 40,000-pound rig screeched, tires slipping slightly on the slick pavement. My heart pounded like it was going to burst. By some miracle, the SUV straightened out and stayed on the road. The CB radio lit up with panicked chatter. "There's a truck flipped over at mile 192. Careful, the road's like ice. I can't see a thing up ahead, everyone keep your lights on. All drivers, find a pull-off. Don't risk it." I knew I couldn't keep going. I slowed down, scanning for the nearest exit, and finally spotted a small emergency lot. A few other rigs were already parked there, hazard lights blinking through the storm. I shut the engine off and sat in silence, listening to the wind slam against the trailer. At the rest area, a few drivers got out, raincoats flapping in the gusts, gathering under the tiny shelter. I joined them, and for a while, we were strangers standing together in the same storm. One guy named Joe told us about the time he got stuck in Montana for 3 days because of a snowstorm. Another driver shared tips on where to get cheaper fuel along I-80. We laughed, swapped stories, shared hot coffee. In moments like that, you really feel the quiet brotherhood of the road. We don't need full names, just knowing you live this life too is enough. After about an hour, the storm eased. The dark clouds began to clear, revealing a post-storm sky breathtaking. The wet asphalt reflected the fiery orange of the sunset, and far in the distance, the Colorado mountains glistened under the fading light. I stared at it and thought, this job is tough, but it shows you things no other life ever will. I climbed back into the cab, fired up the engine. The wheels started rolling again, carrying me back onto the open road. And I knew every mile has its story, waiting to be told. After the storm, I drove another 150 miles before I felt it had heavy pull behind my eyelids. You can fight fatigue with coffee, with loud music, even by cracking the window to let the cold wind slap your face. But your body always wins. If you keep pushing, it stops being safe. I pulled into a small rest stop off the interstate. A few other rigs were already parked, their cabin lights glowing faintly in the darkness. I set the brakes, shut down the engine, and reclined my seat. A truck cab isn't big, but it's all you've got. I pulled the curtains, turned on the small fan for some air, and rested my head on the soft pillow Sarah had packed for me. Sleep on the road is never deep. You hear engines idling nearby, footsteps outside, sometimes even the soft knock on your door, women wandering the truck stops, offering themselves to lonely drivers. It's a common temptation out here. A lot of guys give in. They're tired, they're alone, and they've got cash in their pocket. Me? I've had my share of knocks. I've heard the whispers through the curtain. But I always shake my head, pull the curtain tighter. I have a family. A wife waiting at home. Some temptations, once you turn away from them, you'll never regret it. I managed to catch about 4 hours of sleep. When I woke up, it was pitch dark. I washed my face in the cold water of the rest stop bathroom and grabbed a quick meal, a burger, a hot cup of coffee, and a bottle of water. $12. Food on the road isn't cheap, but it's the price you pay for convenience. Back on the highway, the night felt both peaceful and exhausting. The road was almost empty, just the occasional headlights of another truck passing by. Sometimes I turned on soft country music, sometimes I tuned in to late-night radio talk shows. And in between the silence, I thought of home, Sarah tucking the kids into bed, the quiet hum of the house I wouldn't see for another day. After nearly 10 straight hours behind the wheel, I finally reached the industrial park on the east side of Denver, the drop-off point for this load. It was a massive warehouse complex, with a parking lot big enough for hundreds of rigs. I handed over the paperwork, waited while the dock workers checked the freight. They counted, inspected, and finally signed off on the delivery. The supervisor shook my hand and said, "You're almost half a day early. Company's gonna throw in a little bonus for that." I smiled and nodded. Out here, if you deliver on time, or better yet, early, you get an extra $150. It's not much, but it's enough for a small gift for my wife, a toy for the boy, maybe a coloring book for my daughter. When the clerk handed me the envelope with my pay, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Another haul finished. This wasn't just money, it was the quiet joy of knowing it would bring smiles to the people waiting at home. I imagined Sarah opening the little gift bag I'd bring back, a scarf she'd mentioned once, a toy truck for my son, and a set of markers for my daughter. And I thought, yeah, it's worth it. After the paperwork was done, I left the warehouse and found a cheap motel nearby. I checked into a small single room, took a long, hot shower, and finally stretched out on a real bed. For the first time in days, I slept without the rumble of an engine outside my window. This job is hard. It's lonely. It's full of temptations and risks. But it also gives you quiet moments of peace, a strange kind of freedom, and the simple rewards like your family's happiness when you come home. The next morning, I climbed back into the cab, ready to head home. Another trip was done. I looked at the road ahead and thought, long-haul trucking isn't for everyone. It teaches you patience. It teaches you strength. And it teaches you to appreciate the most ordinary things. Even when the road is tough, hope never really disappears, just like the sun always rises after the storm. If you're listening to this story and feel like life's been too heavy lately, remember this: there are people out there fighting their own battles every single day. You're not alone. And as long as you keep moving forward, you'll find your light too. Thanks for riding with me on this trip. I'll see you on the next stretch of the road.